This is Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum Part 2. I hope you already watched Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum Part 1. The tour of the campus includes Richard Nixon's birthplace and boyhood home, the Marine One helicopter used by several presidents, and the final resting place for President and Mrs. Nixon. The permanent galleries include state-of-the-art interactives, and the special exhibits gallery hosts a variety of exhibits several times each year. From serious child to accomplished student to loving husband, Navy veteran and public servant, Nixon grew into a complex and multifaceted man, and this early experience helped to shape the legacy he left behind.
So I asked her for the date, and she said, "Well, I'm very busy."
When Nixon was 9, his father bought a small gas station and general store in Whittier. When he was 14, old enough to drive during their time, he was put in charge of the store's produce. Every day he got up at 4 a.m. to drive to Los Angeles to go to markets for the best fruits and vegetables that they had to offer and bargain for the best prices. Back at the store, he would sort, polish, and arrange the produce before heading off to school. He rallied with a successful run as class president in his freshman year in college. He won a full tuition scholarship to Harvard, but the family couldn't afford the cost of traveling and living in the East. Nixon enrolled instead at nearby Whittier College, which allowed him to live at home and continue working in the family store. Nixon once said that his father and his college football coach were the two greatest influences on his life. Graduating near the top of his class, he won a full tuition scholarship to the Duke University Law School. He enlisted in the Navy and was commissioned as an officer in 1942. He eventually shipped out for service on several islands in the South Pacific. Lieutenant Nixon thrived in the military environment. He honed a variety of skills from poker to negotiating and encountered men and women from diverse backgrounds from all across America. On September 8, 1974, 1 month to the day after President Nixon announced his resignation, President Ford granted him a full, free, and absolute pardon for any offenses committed during his years as president.
One of the circumstances I knew was necessary to address the nation. Very late at night, I think it was 2 a.m. in the morning, the silent majority theme came into my mind.
Telegrams by the tens of thousands that came from across the country. The voice of the silent majority.
The voice of America was the silent majority. And that sustained me. Everyone in this society is a great natural resource. Whatever his background, sex, race, etc., have the opportunity to go to the top. Otherwise, society is not as great as the king.
The responsibilities of the presidency always weigh heavily, but the added stresses of Watergate in the months leading up to the resignation took a significant toll on Nixon's health. In June of 1974, while he was on his trip to the Middle East, he suffered a recurrence of phlebitis, a condition that leads to the formation of dangerous blood clots in the legs. After his resignation, the condition worsened, with large new clots threatening to break loose and travel to his lungs or heart. The surgery to treat the former president's condition almost proved fatal.
Today is a day for his family, his friends, and his nation to remember President Nixon's life in totality. May the day of judging President Nixon on anything less than his entire life and career come to a close.
It's a long way from your beloved to the White House. And I shall rise, fight again. That's the story of my life. $2,000 years ago,
living every day of his life to the hilt, the largest figure in our time, whose influence will be timeless. That was Richard Nixon.
So let us now say goodbye to our gallant friend. He stood on the pinnacle that dissolved into precipice. He achieved greatly, and he suffered deeply.
This is the First Lady's Garden. This is the memorial site of President Nixon and Mrs. Nixon. President Richard Nixon was the 37th President of the United States. He was the first native-born Californian to hold the presidency. President Nixon achieved significant advances in international diplomacy by ending U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War, opening lines of communication with China and the Soviet Union, and initiating the Middle East.
It's okay to take pictures in here?
Yes, you can take pictures. So welcome to Richard Nixon's Birthplace. Feel free, as I'm talking, you can peek inside of different spaces we have here. I'll begin by saying that most of the furniture here is original to the home. That is because after Hannah Nixon's death, Richard Nixon's mother, in 1967, her son and daughter-in-law, Don and Clara Jane, they moved all the furniture to storage. That's why we're fortunate enough to be able to display it to our guests. The first room in front of me here we have is the bedroom. Richard Nixon was born on that very bed on January 9th, 1913. So it was one of the coldest nights in Yorba Linda at the time. That's why his parents decided to have him here. And he's the only child that was born here at the home. Over the headboard, there are two picture frames. Those are original, made by Richard Nixon when he was a young boy for his mother for Mother's Day. Over the bureau, there are two photographs of his grandparents, Sarah and Samuel Nixon, as well as a Bible that belonged. This is where Richard Nixon learned the art of debate. His father was very argumentative, loved to discuss many topics. Kind of prevent him from eating supper all the time, talking about different issues. But there's also a high chair that was used by the Nixon boys here at the home. Behind you, we have the living room. On the wall there, we have a composite photo of the boys around the age of 4. From left to right, we have Harold Nixon. He was the oldest son. He died at the age of 23 due to tuberculosis. To his right is Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States. In the middle, I mentioned previously, was Don Nixon. He saved all the furniture here. To his right, that is Arthur Nixon. He died at the age of 7 due to a form of tuberculosis, very, very young age. And lastly, we have Edward Nixon. Now, he was born in Whittier in 1930.
So this house was always owned by the Nixons, or did they sell it to someone else?
They sell it. There's also a bathtub. You can see a drawn out corridor that is original, used by the Nixon children. Here we have the kitchen. Now on your right, as you're walking in, that is the California cooler. It had an intermesh design that allowed the cooler air from underneath the house to cool the produce as long as the door was closed. So it acted sort of a pre-refrigerator. Other features they had an ice box and a stove. These are not original to the home, but are representative of the time. The Nixons would have had a kerosene instead of a gas. Electricity was also more modern. It came later in the home, kind of with some adjustments. But what is original is actually these cooking items here.
Frank and Hannah Nixon bought the land and built this farmhouse in 1912. He planted orange and lemon trees on 8 acres. They had one child at that time, Harold, who was about 3 years old then. On January 9, their second son, Richard, was born. Of the 5 Nixon boys, Richard was the only one born at home. Richard Nixon spent his first 9 years here. On the other hand, Edward, the youngest son, was born in Whittier and never lived in this house.
Has numbers on it. That told the iceman how much ice they needed each morning. So they just put it to the right place. So if it said,
The Nixons left Yorba Linda in 1922 when the Groves failed and they moved to Whittier. About 1925, the Yorba Linda School District purchased 5.5 acres and erected a school where the library stands today. This school was renamed the Richard M. Nixon Elementary School when he was elected vice president. This is the presidential helicopter. Born in the simple house, Richard Nixon embarked on a journey that would take him to the farthest reaches of the globe and the highest pinnacles of power.
The outlook is far more hopeful than what we went through this past week. I think I can safely say that the chances for